It is highly anticipated that Errol Spence Jr. will be facing off against Sebastian Fundora at 154 pounds in October. Errol Spence will be looking to reinvent himself at the 154-pound weight class against the gigantic titan Sebastian Fundora, who is at 6 feet 6 inches tall. Errol's situation looked grim in his last two fights against Terrence Crawford and Yordenis Ugas, but this will be his chance to come back better and stronger. Former professional boxer Sean Porter shockingly stated that Errol will be stepping back in action against Fundora.
I'm hearing there's a rematch in place. I'm also hearing that there's a possibility of the big fish getting in the ring with Fundora. You know, so Samson said when Errol got in the ring, he shook his hand, told him, "Yeah, you're gonna get him, you got next." Yeah. And then he said after that, I remembered that, you know, hey, we do have this rematch clause.
Sean Porter stated while talking about Sebastian Fundora that he beat his opponent Tszyu in March 2024, and he looks in a good shape to even beat Errol Spence. If Errol's equilibrium is not intact and his game is off against Fundora, then it's game over for him because he already performed very poorly against his last opponents. Sean compared Errol to Rolly Romero because he cannot beat anybody anymore since his technique is off. Unless Rolly comes up with some real adjustments, he has zero chance of winning against any real boxer. Furthermore, another commentator from the Sean Porter podcast claimed that Errol's accident really took something away from him. Errol Spence had 3 very serious road accidents that may be the reason he hasn't performed well in boxing all this time. The truth was Errol's prominent name with 28 and 0 victories before the accidents. Spence crashed his car 3 times in 2019 and 2022, resulting in him suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and multiple facial lacerations. His accidents are another reason that led him to his eye surgeries this year. Sean Porter's friend claimed that Errol was his favorite welterweight champion because no one could stop him, but then he lost to Terrence Crawford. Errol Spence fought Terrence Crawford in 2023 and lost just after 3 rounds. The fight was highly anticipated by fans, but the results were not even close. Sean's friend claimed that Errol has problems with equilibrium because he could see it in the sparring sessions of Errol and Derek James in the gym. Derek James was hitting Errol on the side, and he was stumbling just a little bit, which proved that Spence had trouble maintaining his balance. The same problem was displayed when Terrence Crawford beat Errol in the ring. Sean's friend believed that Errol lost to Terrence because Spence's face was swollen and he was still healing from the injury. Sufficient time was not there to let the injuries heal, even though Errol gets credit for still getting back up to fight. Meanwhile, when Sebastian Fundora heard about Errol Spence coming to Vegas, he felt super excited to face him.
Okay, all right, and just real quick, Errol Spence said that he's going to come out here in Vegas. I'm sure you heard. What's your thoughts on him saying he wants the winner of this fight?
It's good. You know, he's a big fight. It's like Thurman. I want one of those guys. Why can't I get one of those fights?
Okay.
Reports have come out that Tszyu and Crawford have, teams have been in talks.
In the Sean Porter podcast, Sean claimed that the fight between Tszyu and Sebastian Fundora was a complete bloodbath. While Porter watched Fundora and Tszyu fight, he believed that this fight would not go on much longer. Porter also did not believe that the fight would move past the 4th round. Sean stated that it's much easier to sit on a couch and watch a fight instead of what a corner should do in the ring. Sean further commented on the fight that Tszyu was hurt really badly in the 2nd and 3rd rounds with a cut on his forehead, and it seemed like he did not have much experience with fighting taller opponents like Fundora. Porter further stated that Fundora did not escape the fight unharmed. Sebastian got hurt on his nose and there was blood coming out of it, so he switched up the game and changed his movements. The fight eventually ended after a grueling 12 rounds, and Sebastian Fundora was marked the victor of the bout, claiming 2 belts. Bomac, who is Terrence Crawford's trainer in camp, was asked about the Spence versus Fundora matchup. He responded by saying that this fight will be the determining factor for Spence on what he's got left.
Okay, definitely, thank you. So question, what do you think about this Spence Fundora fight?
We'll find out how much Spence got left. You know what I'm saying? Fundora has been beat, I think, 1 or maybe 2 times before, but he had some close fight. He had a close fight with Jamonte Clark that was we use as a sparring partner, which is a really good kid. Been talking to him. We're gonna find out what he got left after this fight.
Interview with ProBox TV, former boxing champion Paulie Malignaggi stated that Sebastian Fundora is one of the best fighters in the 154-pound division because of his great height and reach.
Into all things boxing, we know about Sebastian Fundora's last fight, a breakout performance against Tim Tszyu. Now, that launched him to the top of the 154-pound division, where he has 2 titles now. What was next for him? Well, it turns out it might be Errol Spence Jr. in October. Sources are reporting that the fight is ready to go, that it might be in Texas. We're talking about AT&T Stadium, a gigantic venue that Errol Spence Jr. has fought in before. So, what does the future hold, and do we think it's the right fight? Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri joining me in studio. Paulie, when we talked about 154 and how hot it was, when we listed out the best fighters, you went, well, he's got the most titles. Right now, Sebastian Fundora is looking great. He has the reach, he has the height, he has a lot of difficulties for his opposition.
Paulie further commented on the 154-pound division. He said that there are a lot of great fighters in this division, and it's not sure who the top of them is yet, since Crawford is stepping up to this weight class. Paulie stated that boxing loves not to stick to its own rules, and he further commented, Errol Spence is not supposed to get a title shot coming off a loss, so the fact that we're even talking about this is wild, but just as usual, boxing makes it up as it goes along. Also, this is to no one's shock and surprise that Errol Spence was inside the ring once Fundora was declared the winner a few months ago against Tszyu. Paulie said that he would have liked Errol to get a fight in between the Crawford fight before he steps up against Fundora, but that doesn't seem to be the case. Paulie stated that the long layoffs coming into the Crawford fight for Spence has damaged his reputation, and then we have another long layoff before he fights Fundora. Paulie claimed that Spence does not like tune-ups. He jumps right into action, but Paulie also believed that tune-ups are necessary since those are the rules, but apparently the rules are very flexible in boxing and they change as the situation changes. Paulie, while joking around, said that sometimes we don't even know why we are doing these shows because we don't know anything about what's going to happen. Paulie further mocked boxing's silly rules by saying that we try to comment according to the rules, and then the decisions in the sport are flipped around from time to time. Whatever works, boxing just takes a chance to make it happen. Meanwhile, boxing analyst Chris Algieri was asked what he thinks of the Spence versus Fundora matchup, to which he responded that Spence was always going to be the guy to match up against Sebastian despite his loss to Crawford.
Yeah, but speaking of not going to the rules, I mean, Fundora was not supposed to win against Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu, obviously an excellent fighter. He was considered the ace side in that fight, but a great performance from Sebastian Fundora. So, Chris, to that point, is he the right bounce-back fight if you're the people handling Errol Spence Jr.? Tall guy, rangy, tough, new weight class. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I mean,
Chris said that Spence is the type of person that doesn't do tune-ups, and he is curious to see Errol fight against the tall giant Sebastian Fundora while coming off a 1.5-year layoff. Algieri is surprised to see the 2-tier system of boxing because if you're a money guy, then the rules change for you, and if you don't have money, then you have another system of law in place. Chris stated that right now we are dealing with the money guy, so we have to change our thought process. From the business perspective, the Fundora and Errol matchup makes a lot of sense. While Chris commented on Fundora, he said that clearly Sebastian is not the money guy and he's not very famous. Nobody knows how good he really is, but he seems to be on the weaker end of the division. Algieri further stated that if Sebastian gets the win against Spence, then he will have the head of the main guy on his roster, and that will elevate his rank in the division. The bout will be taking place in Dallas, Texas, where Spence sells, and they have the Mexican fan base there as well. Chris also stated that if Spence wins, then he will solidify himself in the division once again, and promoters would love that because Spence sells. Errol should have no problem winning if he has his A game on, and he must win, stated Chris. Paulie interrupted Chris on the point that Spence would be winning against Fundora. Malignaggi stated that we cannot write off Fundora because we don't know how good he really is. The same way we cannot say that Spence is back because he thinks he can beat Fundora. Paulie mockingly stated that if Fundora would beat Spence, then he still may not get the credit he deserves for the win because it was a title shot for Spence. Furthermore, Paulie was asked who has the most question marks when it comes to Fundora and Spence. Spence is coming off of an swooping against Bud Crawford, and Fundora is coming off of a win against Tim Tszyu, but has a late notice opponent, which is Spence, and an awkward build. Paulie responded to the interviewer's question of the fighter having the most question marks on their actions. I think both. I mean, I guess that does make the fight kind of exciting because you don't really know what kind of version of these guys you're going to get, but it's also in a bad way because you don't like you're kind of trying to sell them as better than what they might be. Moreover, Paulie said that Fundora deserves the credit for his win against Tim Tszyu, even though the win was controversial due to the fact that Tim received a severe cut. Paulie Malignaggi further commented that they are raising plenty of questions for the public going into this fight. For example, I think Ortiz and Tszyu beat both of them, you know what I mean? Like both of those guys beat any fighter in that fight, you know what I mean? But we're gonna have that main event in a stadium, and Ortiz and Tszyu are going to be a co-main event to Crawford. Like, you understand why boxing is so weird. Chris Algieri interrupted Paulie's remarks on the absurd matchup being weird. Algieri stated that he doesn't think it's weird because it's about the finances, it's about filling the seats in the stadium, it's all about getting as many fans to watch the fight so that promoters can sell the event. Meanwhile, in an interview elsewhere, Andre Ward was asked about Sebastian Fundora, so Andre hinted on Errol aiming to fight Sebastian.
What do you think of Terrence fighting the winner of Saturday's fight, Tszyu and Fundora? He's made himself the mandatory for the winner.
I think it could be good, but then all of a sudden we see a tweet. Errol Spence.
Right.
So Errol Spence, from what I know, is not going to tweet nothing like that unless there's some backdoor conversations going on saying you in position.
Before Tim Tszyu fought Sebastian Fundora, it was rumored that Tim would emerge victorious and the winner would have to fight Terrence Crawford. Surprisingly enough, Fundora won his fight with Tim, but then Spence flew in to call out Fundora. Andre Ward seemed excited to see how Errol Spence's next fight turns out. Ward explained the irony behind Errol Spence fighting Fundora. He said that the top guy of the 154-pound division should be fighting Terrence Crawford, but then you see Errol matching up with Fundora, which is really tricky, but it's happening in the boxing world. On the other hand, Errol Spence Jr. seemed wildly excited to fight Fundora. That will eventually lead him to a rematch with Crawford.
You told Bud you don't wait in lines. You know, you mentioned that you might want to fight Fundora. Are you staying to that? You still want to come back and fight Fundora?
Oh yeah, for sure. Come back and fight Fundora, then I guess Crawford mandatory, so we do a fight too.
Errol Spence was informed that his fans were worried about him and they were wondering what he has been doing ever since the Crawford fight. Errol responded by saying that he has been chilling, traveling, and keeping himself low-key. Furthermore, Errol claimed that he has been signing property contracts and spending time with his kids. Being a full-time dad outside of boxing is a really fun job for Spence. When Errol talked about his life outside of boxing, he claimed that he's a normal person. He further elaborated, "I go shopping myself, go to the grocery store myself with my girl, I go to park with my kids, I go to their grandma's house with my kids, I do everything." Errol further goes on to say that a lot of people understand where I am coming from. Outside of boxing, I'm a regular person. Errol enjoys spending time with his friends and connecting with his family. Spence admitted that he doesn't say much, so he claimed that he will start speaking more because many people are wondering where he has been all this time. Meanwhile, former CEO of Mayweather Promotions, Leonard Ellerby, was asked about the Errol versus Fundora matchup. He responded by saying that Errol is his own master and he gets whatever he wants.
What's up, boss man? Tim Tszyu's manager said that they will vacate the WBO title to fight Errol Spence first instead of Crawford, man. What do you think about that, man?
Well, again, I just saw that. I saw a tweet yesterday from Errol. The difference between Errol and everybody else, Errol gets what he wants.
Leonard further remarked that Errol is family. If he says he wants to fight Fundora, then Al Heyman, who is Errol's promoter, is going to make it happen. In another interview, Sebastian Fundora was asked if he would vacate the WBO belt to fight Errol Spence after his win against Tim Tszyu.
Sebastian, congratulations, young man, on a great win. My question to you is: the WBO orders you to fight Crawford next, or you'll be stripped. Under any circumstances, will you vacate the WBO belt to fight Errol Spence?
Whatever they give me, Errol Spence is a great opportunity.
Sebastian astonishingly stated that Errol Spence is a great opportunity and it's like a match made in heaven. But he also said that Crawford is the best fighter in the world. Fundora concluded that he would like to fight Terrence Crawford as well. Furthermore, sports executive Steven Espinoza commented on the Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford rematch. Steven declared that Crawford was willing to do the rematch given his incredible status as a boxer and his business mind.
Why did Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence rematch fall apart?
Well, look, Spence definitely wanted his get back. He definitely wanted another shot, and obviously, Crawford, being the gentleman that he is and the businessman that he is, he said okay. Whether it was exactly the terms of the rematch clause or not, he was certainly willing to do it.
Moreover, Steven brought to light the fact that Errol has been going through eye surgeries due to his accidents in the past. Espinoza further claimed that it's not fair to keep Terrence Crawford waiting due to Errol's recovery since Crawford is looking to retire soon. Steven also claimed that both Errol and Crawford were willing to make the fight happen, but unwanted delays took the whole rematch thing apart. Espinoza is unsure when Errol will be coming back, but in the meantime, Terrence Crawford is taking the spotlight and he is free to fight whoever he wants. In another interview, Sebastian Fundora's promoter was asked if Errol Spence Jr. is a better option for Fundora instead of Crawford. He ironically responded in favor of Spence because that will be the best payday for Fundora.
I need to maximize the most money for the fighter.
And
I believe he deserves it.
Is that Errol Spence Jr.?
That's correct.
Over Crawford? Like, does Spence more money? Or?
No, Crawford will not sell out 90,000 people in Dallas. I can tell you that much.
Sebastian's promoter Samson, while he talked about Crawford, claimed that he is a better fighter than Errol Spence. He further adds that the main goal is to generate the maximum profit for the fighters, and Errol Spence is the only way out. As Mayweather would say, boxing is business, and the thing about business is that it needs to turn around better. Samson painfully admitted that Errol Spence is a tough opponent, as he said, "I believe that this one of the point that while Spence is a really good fighter anyway, especially in 154, so I believe that he would have a shot, but now you need to wait like you made others wait." That is the boxing world there. Not only one way, there are two ways. Former boxer Sean Porter was interviewed if it was fair of Errol Spence to step up and claim the fight with Fundora in the ring after Terrence Crawford had already tweeted on fighting the winner of Tzu versus Sebastian matchup. Sean stunningly claimed that Errol is gonna get that fight regardless.
Question for you, so obviously Fundora, Tzu result, we saw what happened there. It looks like they might rematch, but there was a lot of talk about who would fight Fundora next, right? People trying to skip the line. Errol got in the ring. Crawford had something to say about that on Twitter or the internet, whatever it was. What do you think about that? Do you think, if not Tzu, does Errol have the right to ask for that fight next? And is Bud deserving of it?
I mean, obviously Bud is deserving of it. Me personally, what I think is that if Errol wants that fight, I think
Porter claimed that it's not the right thing to do for Errol to claim Crawford's prize, but if Errol has his mindset on a fighter, then he will get it. Sean mockingly claimed that Errol will get that fight because he's family. It is what it is. Furthermore, Sean was asked who amongst Crawford or Spence would win if they fought Fundora. He responded by saying that either of them can win, and I hate to pick against Samson's fighters, but it's the truth. Astoundingly, Sean remarked that he could be wrong with his prediction, and he could be undermining Fundora's hidden talent. Although both Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence are too dynamic for Fundora, he still showed a lot against his fight with Tim Tszyu. Later on, Sebastian Fundora was asked how he feels about getting the chance to fight Errol Spence. Sebastian seemed fired up as he prepares for the fight with Errol in October.
Fundora, finally I'm taller than you. Fundora, talk about that tremendous, huge, mega fight between you and Errol Spence.
Nothing set yet, but I hope so. Later in October, they'll tell me that date, so it'll be great in Texas.
Talk about that fight, if it does materialize and if it does happen.
I'm very excited. I wanted that fight 2 years ago when him and Crawford were in the mix of finalizing the fight, so now I got it, and now it's my turn.
Sebastian Fundora further remarked that he has been building up his boxing all this time, and now he and his sister are both champions. Next, the interviewer asked Fundora how he went from a nice guy sweetheart to a mean dude in the ring looking to chew people out. Sebastian responded by saying that it's part of the job. When you clock into work mode, some people change their voices. I changed my attitude by switching my game mode on. Furthermore, Sebastian was asked what he thinks of Errol's tweet, saying that the fight with Fundora might be his last fight before retirement. Sebastian responded by saying, who knows what's going through his mind, coming off a loss is kind of hard, so hopefully he's healthy and ready for when we step in the ring. Sebastian was asked what his long-term goals were in boxing, whether he chooses to fight one opponent at a time or become an undisputed champion that reigns terror over his opponents. He responded by saying that we'll see what happens cause the belts are spread out right now like the Infinity Stones in Avengers. Fundora not only has a target on his back, but he is also the king of his division right now, and that makes him feel really good. It's part of his hard work and dedication to winning. Previously, Sebastian wasn't getting the big fights, but now he has stepped onto the red lines after winning 2 belts, so he is happy if it means he gets the big fights. Fundora also claimed that the fights with Errol and Crawford are his dream fights, so he plans on taking them very seriously. Do you think Sebastian has a chance against the new and improved Errol Spence? Let us know in the comments below.